I was given a swivel chair beside the window and a table for two. On Fridays by no later than 7:30 p.m., every detail had been meticulously planned. Lights lit soft music, playing wine already poured. But that wasn't a date. An audit was conducted. A few feet away, my spouse was laughing, being served wine by a woman who remains anonymous. He had been having an affair with this lady behind her back for about a year. At their respective tables was something neither of them had ever heard of, much less imagined. Belonged to her marriage. Yes, even I. Calm down. Got my battle gear on. The lies they've been attempting to hide will finally come to light. Rachel Meyers used to think in a slow, steady love, the kind that blossoms over time via planning meals together, exchanging grocery lists, and going on weekend coffee dates. She valued a steady marriage more than a flashy one. She took great pride in her tenured position, teaching business ethics at Seattle University, which she held for 41 years. Her students really respected hers, and some even said she had the ability to make Shakespearean tragedy out of business case studies. Her modesty, competence, and friendliness won her many admirers among her workplace. The increasing quietness in her Redmond home, meantime, was getting unpleasant. Andrew proposed after she and he had been married for 15 years. To everyone else, they appeared to be significant. A 2-story home with a neat and tidy yard. We have dinner parties every other month. Miles, a golden retriever, was waiting for them at the entrance as usual. Still, Rachel had more life experience. For a long time she had known it. Not only that, but he was becoming more and more tardy in returning home. His clothes had a faint perfume aroma, and there was also a strange, strong woodsiness. No longer did it matter that he never lifted his eyes from his phone once during dinner. In doing so, she vanished from view. He would stare intently at the screen every time she talked. He used to make her laugh with the many shows they could watch in a row, but now he looks emotionally distant and emotionless. His smile had become a currency freely offered to colleagues, clients, and even strangers. But he strangely restrained it from her, as if she no longer deserved it. Regardless, she said nothing. She convinced herself he was just tired. There was an upswing in work at his firm which might indicate a promotion. The high-stakes clients' hard hours and pressure to advance to senior partner status. She tried to tell herself that it was only a phase. At her father's burial, the man who wept by her was not going anywhere. Regardless, she could feel it. While lying in bed on the cold side, at the exact moment that his fingers gently brushed hers, a softer, less intense kiss on the cheek has taken its place. One of the phrases she found herself searching for was, "Signs your partner has emotionally checked out," which was completely unexpected. Without her innocence, Rachel lacked wisdom, constantly thinking, "Not us." She had seen friends go through divorces and extramarital relationships. Andrew, that's ridiculous. To be sure, his ambitions were high, private. But he wasn't irresponsible either, at least in her own head. That night, a night that was ordinary in every way. Her slight awareness turned into incontrovertible truth. She had been grading midterms in the living room. Andrew was upstairs getting ready to meet Tanya with clients for brunch at the crack of dawn. Leaving his phone on the nightstand to charge, he would normally stroll down for a swift kiss on the forehead. As a result of the rain, a trickle of water climbed the stairs. Under the lavatory door, steam contorted. As Rachel sipped her tea, she made an effort to focus on an ethics-based leadership assignment. Suddenly, one sound emerged from thin air. Ping. Be quiet. Figured out. Her eyes darted throughout the space. On the phone's newly flashing screen, it was there. an elementary view of a notification almost elegant in its savagery. Everything is set for Friday at 7:30 p.m. with a seat by the window, just as she likes it. She wasn't in a condition of utter panic, and she certainly wasn't experiencing a beating heart right now. Like the sky holding its breath before a storm, a stillness descended upon it. Rachel ascended the stairs at a leisurely speed, deliberately so. As she does so, her mind files away evidence and her body relaxes. Unaware of it, Andrew was humming behind the door. After much deliberation, she eventually knocked. There was complete silence from her. Instead, she decided to turn around and head back down, for the simple reason that she had experienced an inner metamorphosis, one free of fear and betrayal. Still, let's begin with the specifics. Those who choose to stay silent, the kind that when removed from its sheath, sharpens itself in the same way as a sword. She was hell-bent on avoiding looking back. It may be anything she told herself, a client event, a business dinner, perhaps even anything connected to her employment. Andrew often proposed trendy urban locations for client gatherings, and Verita was just one of several. A painful, just like she likes it, was the way the words escaped her lips. I don't believe you used that phrase when dealing with a client. Despite her parched eyes and trembling fingers, Rachel leaned over the bed and stared at the closed screen. Her index finger remained on the handset. Never in all those 15 years did she ask to see Andrew's phone. Always rejected to give a password. Invading people's personal space was not her style. Trust in her perspective requires allowing one another room, even when it's uncomfortable. Their silence this evening, though, appeared to indicate that they were in accord. Their wedding anniversary was on October 12th, 10:12, and the password has not changed. A barely audible click broke the dead silence of the room, revealing its entrance. At first, her findings didn't shock her. What frightened her, though, was how ordinary they were. There was no drama. Everything was peaceful. To put it simply, dependability. A balanced person. There was no need to hide your identify or send many messages from an anonymous sender using the name Kelsey B, which was shown clearly in all of the exchanges. As far as missing you already and wear that blue dress I like are concerned, they exchanged messages every day, not daily but hourly, beginning with lunch orders and ending with inside jokes with voice notes and blurry photos in between. Even though her fingers were shaking, Rachel persisted in scrolling until she came to the images. In the very room where they were staying in Napa Valley, Andrew and Kelsey were cuddled up on hotel sheets, just as he had mentioned the conference last spring, describing it as dull and exhausting with nothing but stuffy boardrooms and terrible coffee. From in these photos, he seemed everything from bored. On the contrary, he was energized, and he acted as though he hadn't smiled in years. At least not when she was there. In her youthful, vibrant, and light blonde appearance, Kelsey assumed an air of irreverence, exuding confidence and comfort, as if she had nothing to hide, which in all honesty, she truly believed she wasn't. Rachel felt a tremor when she stepped on the floor. No, it's not because I'm sad. In place of humiliation, how many times had she gone to have his clothes straightened, gone to buy him his dry cleaning, and then completely forgotten to cook a meal in the oven? How many times had she remained upsure that he would be late again because of I-5 traffic? At the same time, he was laughing in dim light with another person, a way he hadn't laughed with her in years. Her curiosity was piqued by one message. Just 3 more nights till Friday night, and I've already rented the place you requested. You deserve a special present." The anger began to boil over then, not the kind that makes people scream into their pillows or causes domestic violence. It also avoids explosive materials and violent behavior. Cold, sharper, like cracking ice on a frozen lake it seemed. She may have spoken to him, then walked into the restroom, made an ear-piercing noise, showed him the evidence, and demanded answers he wasn't ready to give. Who can say for sure what kind of effect it would have? Now he could take the tale in the way he wanted it to go, using all the usual suspects like grief, humiliation, and a weak effort at an explanation involving confusion, temptation, or emotional distance. She had seen this scenario play out in her friends' lives, where the females who were quick to forgive ended up suffering far more. No. She remained silent. Her masterpiece would be preparation. Rachel placed the phone back where it had been placed with great care. After filling herself with water, she got to her feet, walked to the kitchen, and stared out the window at the night. While he slept, Miles passed the back entry while the yard lights flickered on and off. A new, stronger structure sprang out of her chest when something burst inside of her. She kissed Andrew goodbye the next morning with an unwavering expression on her face. She wished him well for his early meeting and handed him a thermos of coffee. "Thank you, my love. It's wonderful to have you here." He was busy grinning. As the door slammed shut, Rachel remained standing, her composure unwavering. She reached for her phone and went to the university's HR website. 3 days off was all I asked for. She had not intended for her to collapse. She aimed to be well prepared. Because, well, he had other things planned on Friday night. It was supposed to be hers. Vengeance was never her native tongue. Rachel had a strategy: be quiet. I was raised to believe that intelligence was at its best when it kept quiet. She lacked the temperament for public displays of emotion or humiliation. Now her mind was a raging inferno. She took a seat at the dining room table, a yellow legal pad at her side, and another cup of black coffee. She began to write, not a single letter, a plan. I found Kelsey Brooks online in publicly accessible Instagram accounts, gym check-ins, brunch pictures, self-care mantras, and vibrational alignment. Rachel searched through pictures of avocado toast and dog parks until she found what she was seeking. Kelsey was charming young and perfectly comfortable, messaging the spouse of another woman at all hours. A unique and precious item, a wedding band. A spouse existed for Kelsey. Rachel came to a brief halt. She clicked on the marked name. Jordan Brooks is a gamer and a building designer. His owner built an award-winning design business in San Francisco. He is easy to read and speak clearly. His LinkedIn profile lists green buildings, community projects, and keynote speeches. He has a lovely smile and nice eyes. Another thing about him was that he was the kind of guy who should never be tricked. She studied his photo for a long time, included attachments of images, and sent an email with the subject line, "You should probably see this." She may have messaged him privately. However, it was objectively harsh. She had no desire to further the situation. No way this had to have been premeditated. It was surgical. As a university professor, Rachel felt a great deal of power. She had been organizing speaker panels for a long time, and she had recruited CEOs, authors, and developers, people just like Jordan. It was common practice to go out to the community and provide opportunities for engagement. As a result, she began to type, "Attention Speaking Opportunity in Sustainable Urban Planning." Well, Mr. Brooks. As a senior lecturer in the Department of Society and Business at Seattle University, my name is Rachel Meyers. One of my former students is helping us put together a speaker series about sustainable urban design, and she saw your work on the Mission Creek project. If you are receptive to the concept, I would be happy to have dinner with you to talk about the opportunities and potential cooperation. If that works for you, please let me know. I have a reservation at Verita for 7:30 p.m. on Friday night. When I'll be in the city, a lovely peaceful corner table, ideal for a good talk. With kind regards, Rachel Meyer. It was sent by her. Patiently she waited. After slightly more than 2 hours, the answer came. I appreciate it, Professor Meyers. Please let me participate in it. The time is perfect. I am looking forward to meeting with you. His letter was simple, polite, and delivered with professionalism, and she stared at it. What lay next caught him off guard. But even so, the right to do so was fully with him. Reaching out to Verita was the next most challenging task. She talked without trembling. Hello, I'm reserving a table for 2 this coming Friday at 7:30 p.m. Ideally, we'd like a window seat. The hostess exclaimed with pleasure. There are still a few spaces available. Which do you value, more being on the main level or being in a more peaceful area? Rachel waited for 30 seconds. If it is possible, could you kindly provide a site for us near the Andrew Meyers reservation? Since we're both working on the same project, we'd still like to keep in regular contact, even if our schedules conflict. Sincere dishonesty. A level of candor is there that is adequate. Really, I'll figure it out. 2 tables over, I believe we can accommodate you. The word perfect sounded reassuring when said by Rachel. Which wine do you prefer? It was the hostess who asked. No, I simply want a nice view. As the call ended, she did not move, without any sense of shame. Nevertheless, in contrast, it had remained hidden from her, unlike her sibling. Marcy isn't her closest confidant. The eventual outcome of the conversation seemed to be someone advising her to confront Andrew before making things worse, which would always be followed by gasps, anger, and unsolicited advice. Nonetheless, Rachel favored maintaining the status quo. She wanted to make everything clear. Retaliation was not the objective. Everything revolved on presenting the truth in the clearest possible way. She acted out the part of a lecturer for 3 days. Concentration on Jordan's tasks preoccupied her. Developed a mental inventory of possible questions. Downloaded design articles he has written. No artificiality was allowed. Friday came swiftly. Love you, have a good class, were Andrew's early morning text messages to her, along with a kiss emoji. For a long time, she stared at the message before she erased it. At 6:45 p.m., she stood in front of her closet and looked at clothes differently than a lady, getting dressed for dinner like a warrior choosing armor. She opted for a blue silk wrap dress that was curvaceous, modest, and had pointed shoulders. It seems that Andrew felt it made her look too serious for his taste. All right then. She wore her hair in a low bun, slip into the shoes she had bought last autumn but had never worn, lacking any aroma. A little dusting of mascara and a neutral-colored lipstick can convey an air of serenity. Verita welcomed her by 7:20. Soft, warm light from the dimmed lights danced on the fragile crystal and the corner piano, its soft, sad music permeating the room. Her designated seat was accompanied by the hostess. Someone from your party is going to be here shortly, so please, Ms. Meyers, take this. Rachel sat with her arms crossed over her lap, maintaining an upright stance while she calmly felt her heart rate. It piqued her interest from across the room. the table that seats them, reserved for two. Also, they would be sure no one is watching as they quickly arrive at the world's doorstep. Still, Rachel was victorious. Jordan could do the same, in the form of accusations, shouting, etc. But the most polite and compassionate way it could have been expressed was via the incomprehensible simplicity of truth. Okay, I'll just let them drink their wine. They ought to have their hands held. Let them have trust. She could easily ruin it from her vantage point. Time flew by in the first 10 minutes, like rain on glass. The interior of Verita exudes a delicate scent of lemon and rosemary. Rachel, who had no intention of ordering anything, kept her breathing regular, relaxed her shoulders, and casually browsed the wine list. She stood rigidly by the entrance, as if poised for a stately storm, while the gentle sound of laughter drifted from tables nearby. They were scheduled to arrive at 7:28 p.m. With the confident step she had committed to memory long ago, Andrew strode into the room. He was charming, sharply dressed, and wearing the dark gray jacket she had given him for their most recent anniversary. As he leaned in to whisper something, his hand gently touched the back of Kelsey's waist. She laughed, her head tilted, and her lips painted a fiery red. Andrew peered back for a second, oblivious to the fact that a woman was hiding in the shadows as their maitre d' led them past the host stand. Rachel maintained her poise. Their intimate world, which they had built behind Rachel's back, was now on display as he delicately removed Kelsey's chair and carelessly poured her wine, demonstrating how well they knew each other. The intimate setting, complete with warm lighting and the sound of glasses clinking, added to the atmosphere. She smiled, but her jaw was tight. Someone from across the room spoke out, breaking her stillness. "Rachel Meyer, it's a..." A sharp jolt went through her whole body. Standing there in a charcoal coat and a smooth navy shirt, Jordan Brooks seemed calm and collected, just as in his photos, but maybe a little more weary. When their eyes met, there was something other than polite inquiry in his look. It was a peaceful confidence. Getting to her feet, she reached out to shake his hand. "I apologize, Brooks. I appreciate you being here today. It is really appreciated." "The honor is mine," he declared as he took a seat across from her. "I have used your application before. Sustainable design isn't something you hear a lot of business professors talking about." Initially, they engaged in light conversation, touching on subjects such as Rachel's lecture series, carbon-neutral downtown architecture, and urban planning in small communities. Nodding, asking, and smiling were her go-to gestures. Having said that her peripheral vision was rather dynamic, Andrew stepped up close as he stood across the room. It was obvious that Kelsey was laughing too loudly for the establishment. Her glove barely made contact with his wrist. They knelt down in front of the table. With a composed expression, Rachel firmly grasped the glass of water. "Shortly after I saw it." Aiming for the napkin, she extended her hand. Separated eyes met. Andrew stood still, unable to move forward. His smile waned. Like ink plunged in water, his face went pale. His jaw clenched. He was about to let go of the drink in his hand if the server hadn't been nimble. Kelsey turned to look at him in confusion. She then locked eyes with him. Her smile faded. Rachel was calm and collected. Her eyes darted between them. Their faces came face to face. Absence of any feeling whatsoever. Stay composed. The unvarnished, disastrous truth. She then began to hide her face, whispering to Jordan, "Excuse me, I need a moment." She rose from her seat stealthily. "Just down the hall, I think you'll find the restroom." He responded with a simple, sure, oblivious to the impending storm, The sound of her high heels striking the marble floor sounded like suppressed gunshots as she walked calmly. Upon rounding the curve adjacent to the powder room, the passage suddenly contracted, and there she was. "Hey there, I'm Kelsey," at a standstill. Reclining uncontrollably, she clutched her purse, her eyes widening in understanding. She said, "You're Rachel," her voice barely audible over the music. Rachel was unable to provide a quick answer, angular tilt of the head. "Yet here you are clasping hands with my spouse, while your own spouse sits just a few feet away." Kelsey then pursed her lips. She flushed white. Her voice was shaking. "Contrast this with this. Please, nothing here." She calmly said, "Just say no." Rachel continued, "Don't you think this is the ideal environment for you? The allure of mystery, Pinot Noir, and candlelight." She began, "I didn't intend," before stopping herself. Rachel softly but firmly interjected, saying, "I refuse to accept justifications. I mean Jordan. He is deserving of honesty, will he not?" She turned back to the table and saw that Jordan was staring about, confused. "It would be wise for your husband to be aware of the person he is dining with," Rachel said. In a mix of fear and embarrassment, Kelsey turned around. Just then, Andrew came up behind her. "Rachel?" "I don't see why you're here." His voice was almost a whisper as he begged for mercy. Rachel kept her face contorted. Peering over his shoulder, she fixed her gaze on his anxious face. She gently called out Jordan's name, asking, "Would you be so kind as to take a brief peek around?" As he approached us, Jordan stood tall and polite, yet he appeared confused. "Excuse me, Rachel," Andrew said with a contorted face. Rachel stepped aside to make place for them. "Andrew is her spouse," she said with conviction. Kelsey came into her line of sight. "Plus, I believe you know who she is, the person you're committed to." In the hall, silence fell. They locked gazes with Jordan. Kelsey quavered in her mouth as her eyes sparkled. Andrew took a few steps back. Jordan tightened his jaw clench. His voice remained low. He didn't hit anything. His sole remark was, "How much longer?" Kelsey broke down in tears. Rachel met Andrew's eyes. "Talk to me, please. I need to talk to you, really." Rachel spoke in a calm manner. "Oh, without a doubt, we're heading over there." Following this, she hushed the nearest server and muttered 5 words, "We require an individual room." The waitstaff made no further inquiries. He only bowed and disappeared behind a velvet curtain. Rachel returned to sit down beside Jordan, who remained silent, his shoulders hunched and his lips pursed as he stared at his half-empty glass of wine. Rachel could feel a mix of serenity, strength, and tension radiating from him. In little time at all, they were led to a dimly lit, off-limits corner of the eatery that was oppressively quiet. Each 4 was returned to its place on the table. At first, Rachel sat down. Jordan, as if he had no business being in this courtroom, cautiously followed. Not long after that, Andrew and Kelsey showed up, looking pale and robotic. They looked like students who had been taken to the principal's office for cheating on the final exam. Anarchy prevailed. You won't hear any music here. As they settled into a cozy seat, the only noises were the soft hum of the air vent and the scrape of fabric. Rachel stood with her hands in the correct positions. It was Andrew who broke the news first. "Rachel, I am completely at a loss as to how to begin." Starting 3 days ago, when she first saw the reservation confirmation on your phone screen, she began to recount the events that had begun, with an icy tone adding, "I knew at that point." Their confusion was palpable. Kala glanced down at Andrew, who appeared to be looking in every direction, as if he were searching for an exit that wasn't there. I didn't intend to look. It wasn't that I desired to. The 4-digit passcode is still our anniversary, though. That was all there was to it. Despite his best efforts to reply, Rachel raised her hand palm outward. There will be no monologue. We have received your message. Every single image. Each meal should be eaten at least once. The maximum number of available hotel rooms. Every lie. A little murmur slipped out of Kelsey's mouth. I am deeply sorry. Across at Jordan Rabbit cast a glance. It is the very least we deserve that you and she tell each other the truth. After all, we are married. Only Jordan remained still. He was completely preoccupied with Kelsey. I thought you were just growing into your own. Was it really insignificant? Could it have been stress? His voice was low yet hard as he said, "Just what were you planning to reveal to me?" It was okay for Kelsey to cry now. I was really unprepared for what happened. It started off as a harmless expression of myself. I felt lost and out of place. Andrew noticed. I redecorated your entire home office since you complained about being unable to focus there. You said that a sunny reading nook would help with your anxiety, so I skipped deadlines to make it happen. Jordan's voice quivered when I asked whether he listened too. His confidence faltered. No one else understood your vision, you said. On top of me. Andrew knelt down low. Great job, Rachel. I apologize. It has ruined the one thing in my life that I care about the most, but please do not make this the last chapter. Rachel maintained her poise. On the other hand, her smile was cruel. It would have been the smile of someone who had been through hell and back. The beginning of the end was not tonight. Everything began when your stare at her matched the intensity with which you stared at me. You made up your mind then. Andrew violently coughed. She covered her face with her hands, Kelly. Rachel reached into her handbag and pulled out a little package. She placed it on the table with great care. Key cards were included with the package. Over the street to the hotel. I plan to stay the night there. With my bags, I'm good to go. Andrew adjusted his chair as his anxiety levels rose. Just a moment, Rachel, please don't do this. I'm not requesting your approval, she whispered. I simply did not want you to return home to discover the closet vacant. He drew back his lips once more. If you still have any respect for human decency, you are free to go back to your house on Monday. I will not be there. Leaning across the table, his eyes revealed his despair. I have already notified her that it is finished and the business has lost her. My alternatives include therapy, counseling, or utter solitude. With a nonchalant attitude, Rachel nodded and then said, "Presently she has." What Andrew said with a furrowed brow. She gave her notice this morning, have made it back to Sunset Boulevard. According to her coworker, she failed to address the rumors. Those sideways glances. It is very shameful. A little gasp escaped Kelsey. Were others notified? Andrew's face turned red as he inquired. That was not for retaliation, Rachel said. But I'm sorry, I won't lie to you anymore. I let your mom know. Mark and Jenna. This is visible to everyone, including your college friends, whom you were always attempting to impress. My statements were honest and direct. Along with Andrew's headshake came a louder voice. You have completely destroyed my reputation. She chuckled short and harshly. I want it made clear that I didn't do anything wrong. I just stopped supporting what you built on lies. Your reputation is more important to you than being honest and open. He reached across the table and took hers in his hand. Stay put, please. Your presence breaks my heart. She abruptly pulled away, her voice cold with disapproval. Love cannot be sustained by darkness. You wouldn't have called another woman baby when we were in bed together if you loved me." Embarrassed, Andrew slumped back into his seat. By his estimation, she was useless, he declared. Rachel looked at him, her voice dead calm. My goodness, she was really important to me. Because you kept picking her with every message, dinner, and fib. Your words carried genuine emotion. He hid his face behind his hands. You will destroy my life if you abandon me. The only way Rachel could speak at the moment was in a whisper. No, I'll hold on to mine. Jordan, he was slow to get to his feet. The entire time he kept staring at Kelsey. I am obligated to file. When I get there on Monday. Kelsey said nothing. Nodding, her voice quivered with grief. Rachel got to her feet as she adjusted her coat. She looked across at Jordan. I apologize that this is how you learned it. He kept silent and shrugged. He muttered an apology. It aches, but I had to find out. After giving him a little nod, she moved back to the other two. You two have my best wishes. That is why I will never forgive you. Still, the consequences of our actions eventually catch up with us all. She stood up and departed. Her high heels echoed down the hall like the last courtroom gavel. The appeal has been rejected. We don't need to do another trial. Just the facts, please. Item sent. He was left destitute. It was much colder than she had expected in the motel room. The air was heavy with silence as Rachel lowered her heels and tossed her keys down the marble countertop. From their vantage point on the 12th story, the city lights of Seattle glowed under the starry sky like broken promises. Standing near the window, she let herself to be consumed by the stillness, her palm resting on the glass. Her tears did not fall. I will not be present. She had cried the most at the lonely midnight dinners, unread emails and anniversaries that passed her by. The loss of her marriage had already been lamented. This was only the funeral. The next morning, the city was shrouded in fog. Although Rachel asked for a toasted bagel and black coffee, she hardly touched any of them. The facility allowed her an extra week of leave when she contacted them. To a query on her health, she said, "I'm just doing what I should have done sooner." Communication started later in the day. Things get rolling with Andrew. After then, a call went unanswered. Afterwards, another one appeared. When darkness arrived, her email was already full. Meet with me, Rachel, please. I am committed to going to therapy and will not waver. Oh my, I had no idea I was causing you so much pain. Together we can find a solution. I promise, she vowed. She was betrayed by her silence. I couldn't find the right words. A 4-page handwritten greeting, 22 white flowers, and more had arrived in her campus mailbox before the end of the weekend. But just the opening paragraph had aroused her curiosity. Oh, I see. I was completely ignorant about all that. With great care, she discarded it in the trash. Because serenity rather than anger now drove her. But peace does not come cheap. On that particular weekend, she moved into a furnished apartment near Capitol Hill. The apartment was small with just one bedroom, a balcony, and a galley kitchen, but it felt like home. She bought some plants and started taking photography classes on the weekends. Before putting herself on autopilot, she made a playlist with all her favorite songs. On top of that, she reported feeling somewhat lighter upon awakening every morning. As time went on, Andrew began to unravel. On one occasion, he came up unannounced at her office with a dirty tie, disheveled hair, and dark circles under his eyes. Saying, "I'm not okay," he seemed disturbingly like the man she had married. "I get it," Rachel remarked with a sly grin. "But now that this is out of my hands..." she gently but firmly shut the door. Concerned about the optics were the partners, according to a friend who informed her later on when stories about the affair started circulating. After just 2 weeks, Andrew was removed from the company's senior leadership page, and a notification saying extended personal leave was placed. It seems like word got out. It was not Rachel who inquired. There was no need for her to. Mystified Kelsey returned to Los Angeles incognito. Her company's bio vanished into thin air, and she became private on Instagram. Suddenly, the comments stopped. One day, Rachel received an SMS message from a mutual acquaintance. Andrew and Kelsey and I met in a cafe in Bellevue. Dissimilar to a love couple in every way. More likely, people are trying to remember why they gave up so much for each other. In response, Rachel remained silent. She vanished without a trace. A few days subsequent to that, Andrew sent her his final message. No matter how much I try, we just won't go our own ways. Seeing me no longer brings a smile on her face. By the way, she doesn't look like you in her eyes. It should have brought satisfaction. It failed miserably. Why? Because she had no want to witness his suffering. Her plans left no space for regret. She had no choice except to sit tight till she felt better. Everything shifted on a Saturday morning. Rachel opened her eyes to the sight of the sun's rays gliding across her hardwood floor and the gentle music of her beloved record resonating through the room. Standing barefoot with a steaming mug of coffee in her hand, she donned a massive hoodie. With a smile on her face, she spoke. Being happy just for other people's benefit is not acceptable. An authentic look, not a facade. A kind word said, since breathing felt great. In the middle of the afternoon, her phone rang. This is Jordan. Since that tragic night, he had been silent. They had communicated briefly, mostly for the sake of checking in, but nothing noteworthy. There is a lack of anticipation. The message stated, "Blackbird for coffee." I will not mention them, the day-to-day struggles of two ordinary people. Furious Rachel stared at the TV. Afterwards, I entered, "Just give me 10 minutes." Upon her arrival, she saw Jordan already there. The fur is the same plush. Gentle gaze as well. 2 beverages, 1 sweetened latte, and 1 coffee were set out on the table. Was my assumption correct? He beamed. "You recalled," she said before settling into a chair. Of course, some details are worth focusing on. Not to mention the awkwardness or the debris, they said nothing about the issue. I was curious as to which seasons were most representative of their personalities as they spoke about design, musical genres, and road trips, all of which I like. After months of bottling up her laughter, Rachel let out a big laugh. A woman clinging to the past would not be the one to laugh like that. Someone just coming into their own laughed at that sound. Sitting on the balcony with a fleece blanket draped over her shoulders, she returned to her apartment that night, and while whispering to herself, watched the sky change from a warm amber color to a deep blue. It's no problem at all. Rebuilding is all I've done, little by little. That depends on her. Andrew caused a commotion whilst Rachel remained silent. His first move was to try to hide his genuine emotions. He still wore his tidy, haircut-had polished shoes and wore a wicked grin as he sauntered down the corridor as if nothing had happened. On the other hand, chaos was brewing behind the scenes. In the elevators and subsequently in private meetings, rumors began to circulate among the partners of his business. The issue is judgment, not the matter itself, with respect to accountability in reference to the image. As a brand, trust has always meant something to the corporation. Even its most renowned senior partner had become a walking paradox. Some consumers did not withdraw funds from their accounts. A business partner quietly suggested taking a break to regroup after meeting with him privately. Burnout was the meaning given by the authorities. Betrayed trust was the central theme. He knew the story well and out to pull off the same type of stunt that Andrew had. Unlike earlier betrayals, this one was unique. Those moments when you look into the mirror and fail to recognize the guy staring back at you. Instead of calling Rachel, he tried contacting her through her new apartment complex by sending flowers. A beautiful bouquet of white lilies, her favorite flower. She allegedly declined the offer without even checking the card, according to the delivery lad. Once he waited patiently outside her office after crossing the street. Nobody attempted to approach under any circumstances. He seemed to have shrunk in stature, declined and decreased too. This is analogous to a partly inflated balloon that is still moving but is unsure of its destination. The news quickly spread once Rachel admitted her guilt. No, not the tabloids, not in raucous internet posts, just plain old conversations with friends, family, and coworkers. His defense had been withdrawn. Distancing oneself rather than fury and mayhem was the end outcome. Less and fewer people started inviting him to happy hour. The partners rescinded his invites to client dinners. He was receiving fewer and fewer calls. Then a change happened. By the time Kelsey checked his private account in the middle of the night, he had deleted all of the photos of the two of them, chacun of them, each and every remark. It was the same old skyline for her profile photo. His beloved, for whom he had given his life, had mysteriously disappeared. A week later, her number was terminated. Finally, she disappeared, right away. Rachel had decorated Andrew's home office with framed quotes from his days as a law student and a ceramic pen holder that he had claimed to love. Andrew sat alone in his office. It was now too late to even consider looking at it. A call was made to his mother by him. She used the phrase, "deeply disappointed," to describe us. He got in touch with his best friend. Nobody is talking, he called Rachel. Ignoring his calls was her choice. He sent his last email. "Through thick and thin, you have been my rock. When you're not here, I am just this." There was no send on his part. He saved it since it was a draft. It was obvious to even him. You can't turn back the hands of time. The hours slipped away slowly. Rachel no longer made it a habit to check the clock every hour. No one else's schedule or needs dictated how she spent her mornings. She made French press coffee since it was a ritual she liked. She played records from bygone eras on a turntable she had rescued from a local charity shop. In her home, she welcomed textures like linen wood and warmth. She no longer acted as a spouse. For the first time in over 10 years, she didn't feel compelled to be one. A change became apparent to a few of her instructors. After the class, one of them said, "You seem to be carrying less weight." Rachel kept silent despite her smile. A story wasn't necessary for certain things. A light-hearted photography class quickly escalated into something far more substantial. I felt better thereafter. Through photography, she was able to reclaim her talent for framing the world. Shadows were now seen as contrast rather than defects. Finally, illumination landed precisely, it became more significant. However, they continued to stay in touch. Occasionally, absolutely, figured out. Discusses cherished films over text messaging, a jazz playlist that can be accessed by a shared link. Commenting on each other's photos is something we do from time to time. It's never sexual, just friendly. She intended to see him at his house after class on a wet Sunday. The apartment had a certain amount of grime. Dried dishes hung from the rack. The couch was covered with a cardigan. But it seemed like Jordan didn't notice. Perhaps all he was observant, yet he still found pleasure in it. Their pepperoni pizza and heavy blankets piled high as they sat on the balcony, oblivious to the mist that enveloped the city below. For some time they didn't say anything. Afterward, Rachel asked, "Do you think we've changed?" Jordan looked at her intently. With a no, he replied, "I believe we're simply going back to our original selves, the ones we were before we changed for the sake of others who couldn't see us." She was betrayed by her silence. There was no need for her to. They took it easy under the amber streetlights a few weeks later after a jazz concert by the river. The sound of nearby water and soft chatter from a cafe terrace behind them. Jordan stopped moving, glanced in her direction. "I'm not too concerned about time," he said. "Being forceful is not my style, but in the event that, someday, if you ever decide to try it again this time with no expectations and nothing more than an honest, open, and discreet relationship, I would be ready." In a quick glance, Rachel met his gaze. His words did not make any requests. An offer was made. "I'm not ready to love like I used to," she said carefully. "However, if it's in the manner you mentioned, then perhaps I've begun, unknowingly." His stillness was almost unbearable. His hand was only extended to hers, while he remained calm, assured, and patient. No cause for celebration. The real deal. Hers it was. A year later, Rachel stood in front of the huge mirror in her bedroom, adjusting a simple blue outfit. It lacked flash. Remarkability was not its aim. It was still clearly her strong yet nuanced, self-assured but not showy. Putting on a pair of pearl earrings that belonged to her mother, she finished off the ensemble. A benign, familiar lump. She was on her way to the retirement party of Professor Ellen Grayson, who had been a mentor to her, and one of the few people who had an influence on her personal growth. The event took place in a downtown hotel's traditional and spectacular ballroom. Rachel had hoped for nothing less than a heartfelt toast, a glass of wine, and comments about making a lasting impression. She was caught unawares by him. As soon as she walked into the room, Andrew positioned himself at the bar. Unlike what she remembered, he was leaner and had gray streaks along his temples. Can be understood well. Continued measurement. His former aura of confidence, however, had dissipated like a scented mist. He turned around and left. Separated eyes met. A brief pause. He strode over with purpose, clutching a red glass. Then he continued, "Rachel," his voice getting gravelly, "I never expected to see you in this place." She mentioned that she was also surprised, but her tone was subtle and obvious. He had a little grin. "After everything, the only person who continues to speak to me is Professor Grayson." Rachel had nodded. In her view, there is always room for people to make amends. As he stared at her, time seemed to stand still. After all that, he finally exhaled. "This is not anything I feel forced to tell you, but I want you to know that my apologies are genuine and sincere." Quietness enveloped her. From there he continued, "I thought I could put it all behind me the second you departed, but alas, I was unable to save what I had shattered. Things fell apart unexpectedly when it came to Kelsey, and the relationship wasn't the only thing that suffered. I lost myself." He lowered his gaze to the ground. "I have been a mask for so long that when no one is looking, I have no idea who I am." He held Rachel's whole attention. The man who had tricked her was invisible to her, but when he himself passed out, no one helped him. Her words were, "I pray you discover tranquility." He nodded slightly in response. "Put down. Is that you? How are you doing right now?" "Yes," she said without hesitation. "It's a completely original creation of mine, under my conditions." Just then Jordan entered the room, a black jacket with the collar left open. She felt supported by that tranquil presence, which was like to gravity. He grinned at her sincere and honest expression. As soon as he laid eyes on her, the idea clicked. He praised him as an honorable man and said, "You should have that." With care, Rachel rested her hand on her bosom. "Respectfully yours truly. As you are aware, start over. Do not do harm to others unless you are ready to do so." Andrew stepped back, as if literally giving her room the green light. Once she got beyond that, she shushed. There were only 2 people who had been broken and then put back together that night, as Rachel and Jordan danced under the golden light of the ballroom chandeliers. No one had shown up, not without flaws. Please, I implore you. At one point, Rachel thought treachery was the last straw, so much so that it utterly shattered everything. It was sacred. If trust was shattered, nothing could ever be whole again. While standing in her apartment, soaking in the quiet and the early light shining through the hardwood floors, she had a startling realization about something else. A betrayal does not mean the end of the world. The big revelation is here. Everything that you were too loyal, too hopeful, or too loving to anticipate is exposed in its worst form. How about recuperation? There are no poetic justice or glorious moments in the delivery of recovery. It is subtle. You can find it in the subtle decisions. Choosing to disregard a message that previously impacted you. Choosing to grin when no one is watching. You have the power to define yourself each and every day. Rachel didn't feel the need for vengeance. She needed to know the reality. Upon receiving it, she remained completely silent. She just let it to echo. Holding on to something that is about to break causes you to throw it away. Once someone's actual character is revealed to you, believe them. You are valuable beyond measure. Leave that place with your honor intact and your spirit intact. That is, putting one's own wants first isn't necessarily a sign of being selfish. Keeping oneself alive is the objective. The power of self-love surpasses all others.